Ijma and Qiyas. Ijma and hold fast all together the rope of Allah, and do not be divided. 3:103, Al-Imran. Qiyas, this is a blessed book which we revealed to you, so that they reflect upon its verses. 38:29, Sad. Quran in relation with Ijma and Qiyas, secondary sources of legal thinking/lawmaking. Note 1. In P1, the main focus is on Quran in relation with Ijma and Qiyas, though supportive a hadith may be quoted. 2. In P2, hadith in relation with Ijma and Qiyas is to be studied, though the relevant verses may be quoted. However, the topics are almost the same for P1 and P2. 3. There may be a question in P1 or P2 about relationship between all the four sources. In such a case, details of relation between the four sources should be included in the answer. Quran and Hadith in relation with Ijma. Ijma is the third source of Islamic legal thinking, and is used when the primary sources, Quran and Sunnah/Hadith, do not provide a direct solution/answer to a new situation. Literal meaning of Ijma is uniting, gathering or agreeing, as it is derived from the root word jama'a, from which all words implying unity or gathering have originated. Example: jama'at/party or congregation, jamu'a, etc. In Islamic Sharia it means consensus of Muslims, companions of the Prophet, Muslim scholarly community, or the whole Muslim ummah, on a new challenging issue about which primary sources are silent. Both primary sources/ASL approve the use of Ijma. The Quran says, "And obey Allah and obey the Messenger and those charged with authority among you." 459, Al-Nisa. Here authority means scholarly or political body that is responsible for legislation/lawmaking. The Prophet declared, "My community will never unite in error." In this hadith, he guaranteed the success of collective work of Muslim legal experts. He used to consult his companions on important occasions such as the battles. There are some fundamental examples of Ijma that include general agreement of the Muslims regarding articles of faith and pillars of Islam, i.e. Tawhid, finality of prophethood of the Holy Prophet, belief in the Quran and other scripts, daily prayers and fasting, etc. This is called Ijma al-Ummah or Ijma of the whole Muslim community. The second type is related to legal matters/legislation, where Muslim jurists collectively find a solution of a new issue that is not mentioned in Quran and Hadith. This is called Ijma al-Ulama or Ijma of the scholars or jurists. It is to be noted that Ijma of the companions may not be changed by the next generation of the Muslim community. Shia community believes that the Imams, Prophet's descendants, are also entitled to exercise Ijma. Ijma is further subclassified into two major types, Azama/Sari or explicit Ijma, and Rukhsa/Sukuti or tacit/silent Ijma. In Ijma Azama/Sari, the jurists/mujtahideen have expressed their opinions about a new matter unanimously, or acted accordingly. In Ijma Rukhsa/Sukuti, some jurists agree and give their consent to a particular issue. Other jurists are informed of Ijma conducted by the earlier group of jurists in this type, if 10% or more of them disagreed or denied, or kept silent over a long period of time, but the remaining 90% agreed, their Ijma would still be valid in lawmaking. There are many examples that show the relationship between Quran and Ijma. The Quran says, "Allah commands you regarding your children, the share of the male will be twice that of the female. If you leave 2 or more females, their share is 2/3 of the estate. But if there is only 1 female, her share will be 1/2. 411, Al-Nisa. This long verse does not mention the case of only one son of the deceased parents. All Muslim jurists reached a consensus that in such a situation, all the estate will be given to the son. Moreover, the same verse does not mention the transgender. Legal experts have unanimously agreed that the share of a transgender will be determined by the dominance of sex characteristics. If there are more male characteristics, the share will be that of sons. Otherwise, the share will be that of daughters. Similarly, the Quran says, "Prohibited to you, in marriage, are, your mothers, daughters, sisters, father's sisters, mother's sisters. 423, Al-Nisa, this verse, however, does not mention of granddaughter and grandmother, but it was agreed by all Muslims that they, too, are prohibited in marriage. The issue of the IVF, in vitro fertilization, or the test tube baby is a modern challenge faced by the Muslim jurists. Islam does not allow any sperm donation by a man to a woman other than his wife, as it will be an act of indirect adultery which is condemned by the Quran. Nor come near adultery, for it is a shameful deed and an evil opening the road to other evils like an illegitimate child. 1732, Al-Isra. All Muslim jurists, therefore, allow an IVF procedure for those childless couples who are partners in marriage. Muslim scholars of all sects in Pakistan conducted ijma about declaring the Qadianis/Mirzais, erroneously called Ahmadis, as non-Muslims. They countered the misguiding interpretation of the Quranic term of seal of prophets, 33:40, Al-Azab, by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani. According to him, this does not mean that Hazrat Muhammad is the last messenger of Allah. The Muslim scholars countered his claim by this hadith, I am the seal of prophets and there will be no prophet after me. They also quoted the categorical statement of the Prophet in his farewell sermon. The Prophet emphatically stated that there would neither be a prophet nor a messenger after him. Thus, the word Muslim was redefined in 1973 Constitution of Pakistan. Similarly, there are many examples of hadith in relation with ijma. On reaching Medina, the Prophet accepted the idea of azan that was proposed by Umar and Abdullah bin Zayd. Accordingly, one azan was delivered for daily prayers including the Friday prayer. During the Caliphate of Uthman, it was reported that many Muslims had started missing the Friday prayer as they could not hear the azan during the noise caused by trade activities in Medina. He consulted his advisors and accepted the idea of one additional azan, the first azan that is delivered nowadays. This way the issue was resolved. Similarly, during the Caliphate of Abu Bakr, all Muslims agreed to compile the Quran because the Prophet had not instructed anything about this. Importance of Ijma. Ijma is a source of uniting the Muslim scholars, and thus, of preventing sectarian divide among them. It reflects the spirit of democracy in Islam, as the opinion of all the concerned people about a new issue or challenge is sought, considered and valued. Ijma trains the scholars to be in constant contact with the primary sources/asl, the Quran and Sunnah. Only then they can decide whether the question put before them has been dealt with in the primary sources or not. So, a thorough study of the two sources is essential for exercising ijma. Eventually, the exercise of ijma trains the Muslim legal experts to cope with new situations collectively in an ever-changing world. This will help them to prove that Islamic teachings are not restricted to a particular age or culture or area, instead they reflect the universality of Islam as claimed by the Quran and Hadith. Quran and Hadith in relation with Qiyas. Qiyas is the fourth source of legal thinking. It is employed when all other sources are silent about finding a solution to a new challenging issue. Its literal meaning is, measuring by comparing with some set standard, or deduction by analogy or comparison. In Islamic Sharia, it refers to the ability of an individual legal expert to reach a decision by comparing a new situation, far, with the principles contained in the Quran and Sunnah asl. Its use has been approved by the Quran and Sunnah. The Quran directs Muslim men to observe justice according to their particular family requirements, marry women of your choice, 2 or 3 or 4, but if you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly, then only one. 4:3, Al-Nisa, now, an individual husband himself will decide how to do justice with 2 or more wives by exercising personal reasoning. Similarly, the Quran allows Muslims to determine the direction of the sacred mosque while they are away from the holy city. Turn your face in the direction of the sacred mosque, wherever you are, turn your faces in that direction. 2:144, Al-Baqarah, so, Muslims determine the direction of the Qibla by using various devices. It is to be remembered that in these instances, a common man is allowed to use wisdom for personal matters, and not for Islamic lawmaking. Lawmaking is always done by the competent religious scholars. The Prophet's ahadith or events from his life allow the use of qiyas. Hazrat Ali was the scribe of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. The treaty stated the name of the Prophet as Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah. The pagan chief from Mecca asked to replace the wording Messenger of Allah with Son of Abdullah, Prophet's family name. When the Prophet asked Ali to do so, he respectfully refused by saying that he did not have the courage to erase the wording Messenger of Allah. The Prophet did not object to Ali's refusal as he had identified the nobility and wisdom of his refusal. Thus, the Prophet allowed his followers to exercise their opinions in such cases. Similarly, the Prophet appointed Mu'adh bin Jabal as the governor of Yemen. Before dispatching him, the Prophet asked him how he would settle disputes and deal with other issues while he was hundreds of miles away from Medina. When Hazrat Mu'adh replied that he would seek guidance from the Holy Quran and Sunnah, the Prophet asked him what he would do in case both primary sources were silent. Hazrat Mu'adh answered, "Then I will exert myself to form my own judgment." The Prophet was greatly pleased on this and prayed for his success. There are many examples to show the working out of Islamic law by using qiyas. The Quran commands Muslims to offer Friday prayer by full devotion, O you who believe. When the call is proclaimed to prayer on Friday, hasten to the remembrance of Allah and leave off business. 62:9, Al-Jamu'ah. This verse/asl does not mention non-business transactions/far. However, the Allah/similarity is the fact that whether a believer is busy in a business or non-business activity, he will miss this important congregational prayer. In view of this Allah, all transactions should be postponed and this hukm/verdict is valid for all times. Another matter in the contemporary world is the issue of organ transplantation in humans. The Quran/asl says, "And he who saves a single life shall be as if he had saved the life of all humankind." 532, Al-Maidah, far will be whether organ transplantation is permissible or not in Islam. Illa is the attempt to save the life of a patient who needs an organ transplanted in his body. So, hukm/verdict is that it is allowed to transplant an organ, liver, kidney etc., in the body of a patient with the noble intention of saving the life of such a patient. Moreover, if donation of blood is allowed for the same noble purpose, donation of other organs is also justified. The Quran prohibits Muslim men from approaching their wives during their menstruation. It says, "They ask you concerning women's menstrual courses. Say it is haram, so keep away from wives during menstruation. And do not approach them until they are pure." 2:222, Al-Baqarah. This verse does not mention approaching women during the course of postnatal bleeding period of around 40 days after delivery of a baby. Here, illa is the state of impurity in both cases. Therefore, Muslim men are prohibited from intimate physical relation with their wives during the period of postnatal bleeding. 2. Another example of qiyas is the prohibition of online gambling. The Quran commands, "They ask you about wine and games of chance. Say, in both these there is great evil, even though there is benefit for some people, but their evil is greater than their benefit." 2:219, Al-Baqarah. This Quranic command does not mention of hints towards the contemporary practice of online gambling. The illa will be the uncertainty of winning or losing money as well as the element of addiction. Therefore, both physical and virtual gambling are forbidden in Islam. There are examples of both Quran and Hadith in relation with qiyas. For example, the Quran/asl prohibits use of khamr/wine, O you who believe. Intoxicants and gambling are abomination of Satan's handiwork, shun them so that you may prosper. 5:90, Al-Maidah. Khamr was made by fermenting, takamir, grapes or dates. Later, new addictive drugs became popular/far. This became a serious question for Muslim jurists. The Prophet had already declared, "Every intoxicant is khamr, and khamr is haram." Illa, therefore, will be the ability of any substance to intoxicate. They include heroin, charas/marijuana, cocaine, and bang/cannabis indica. So, hukm will be to declare all these drugs as khamr. Similarly, qiyas can be linked with hadith for lawmaking. The Prophet demonstrated complete method of wudu in which all washing acts need to be thorough and complete. Once, the Prophet noticed some particles of dried flour on the nails of Hazrat Aisha after she had performed wudu. The Prophet reminded her to perform wudu again after removing the dried flour from her nails. In the light of this asl, the far of using and removing nail polish and other cosmetics by Muslim women will be resolved. They should remove nail polish etc. before doing wudu. Hazrat Abu Bakr's election is an example of both ijma and qiyas. The Prophet had appointed him as leader of daily prayer during the last days of his life, and this is asl/ruling of the Prophet. After the Prophet's death, a great majority of the companions agreed to appoint Abu Bakr as the first caliph. This was done on the basis of Abu Bakr's eligibility to lead the Muslim community, in the mosque or in general/Allah. Q.A. Write an account of how the four sources of Islamic law are used together. 10. B. How useful are ijma and qiyas when dealing with modern issues? 4. ANS. The Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet/Hadith are collectively called the primary sources/asl of Islamic legal thinking. The Quran instructs to follow both, say O Prophet. Obey Allah and obey the Messenger. 332, Al-Imran, as a rule, the Quran and Sunnah cannot contradict each other. The Sunnah explains or supplements the Quranic teachings. For example, the Quran commands observance of the pillars of Islam, and establish regular prayer and pay the charity tax. 243, Al-Baqarah, however, the Quran is silent about the method, timing, and number of rakat of daily prayers. The Prophet instructed his followers, say your prayers you have seen me saying. He then demonstrated the complete method of offering salat/prayer. The Quran, similarly, prescribes the punishment of theft as for the male thief and the female thief, cut off their hands as recompense for that which they committed. 538, Al-Maidah, it does not mention the length of the hand to be cut off. The Prophet elaborated it by saying, the hand of a thief to be cut off from the wrist. When primary sources are silent about a new issue, the secondary sources, ijma and qiyas, are used. The Quran permits the exercise of ijma as, and obey Allah and obey the Messenger, and those charged with authority among you. 459, Al-Nisa, here, authority means a team of scholars/jurists. Similarly, the Prophet guaranteed its success as, hand of Allah is on the community. Relation between Quran and ijma can be understood by this example. The Quran says, Allah commands you regarding your children, the share of the male will be twice that of the female. If you leave 2 or more females, their share is 2/3 of the estate. But if there is only 1 female, her share will be 1/2. 411, Al-Nisa, this long verse does not mention the case of a transgender child. Muslim jurists reached a consensus that a transgender will get the share on the basis of the dominance of male/female characteristics. The Prophet had not directed his companions regarding the compilation of the Quran. After his death, Caliphs Abu Bakr and Uthman compiled the Quran by exercising ijma. Qiyas is the fourth source of legal thinking. It is employed when all other sources do not provide an answer to a new challenging issue. In this, an individual jurist compares a new situation/far, with the ruling in the primary sources/asl. If a similarity or a supportive evidence/Allah is found, the solution or hukm is issued. Its use has been approved by the Quran and Sunnah. The Quran allows Muslims to determine the direction of Qibla by qiyas if they are away from the sacred mosque. It says, turn your face in the direction of the sacred mosque wherever you are. 2:144, Al-Baqarah, the Prophet encouraged the use of qiyas by allowing Hazrat Muadh bin Jabal to use his wisdom when the primary sources did not provide solution to a new problem. There are many examples to show the working out of qiyas. For example, the Quran commands, they ask you about wine and games of chance. Say. In both these there is great evil, even though there is benefit for some people, but their evil is greater than their benefit. 2:219, Al-Baqarah. In modern times, the question arose about the permissibility of online gambling. The illa in this case will be the uncertainty of winning or losing money as well as the element of addiction. Therefore, both physical and virtual gambling are forbidden in Islam. Once there was heavy rain in Medina. The Prophet asked Hazrat Bilal to add these words after the azan, offer prayer at home. This was done in view of the difficulty of Muslims reaching the Prophet's mosque. On the basis of this asl, Muslims in various countries were allowed to offer daily prayers at home during the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. This highly contagious disease threatened the health and lives of the people. B. The two secondary sources are surely useful as both have been validated by the primary sources. Since, with the passage of time, new challenges and issues arise, they have to be tackled by Muslim legal experts in the light of primary sources. The Prophet guaranteed Allah's support for Ijma by saying, "Hand of Allah is on the community." Similarly, he allowed his companions to use their wisdom in his absence. For this reason, his successors elected the first caliph and compiled the Quran after his death. If a Muslim travels into the space, he will have to decide about the timing and other preconditions for the Salat and Psalm according to the opinion of a legal expert, because Quran and Sunnah are totally silent about such matters. The secondary sources are an effective tool to enable Muslim jurists to prove conformity of Islam to all times in all parts of the universe.